right, let's get into it. We will start with the AFC East, and we're going to go in order from last to first, which means we begin with the New England Patriots. Look, I understand they crushed it in the draft. They have an offensive coordinator now who actually knows what to do with offense, so that's important, I would say. Big boost. Good for you. Still don't have Ramondre Stevenson's good. Mac Jones, I'm not sold on, although now I feel like I've almost underrated him I feel like he's almost overrated to the point of being underrated. Like everyone has just kind of been like, oh, he's so great. Oh, he's so great. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe he's fallen off a little bit. Like there's been almost too much of a course correction, but even still, I don't think he's that good. And he's certainly not good enough to make this skill possession group, anything at all. So down on the New England Patriots this year. This defense should be pretty good. Offensively, I think they're going to struggle to score points throughout the majority of the season. And in an incredibly stacked AFC, that's just not going to do it, man. So I have them going under 7. Their win total was set at 7, and I have them going under. In third place, I have the New York Jets. And again, they do not need Aaron Rodgers to be phenomenal in order to carry this team a little bit further than they were last year. This is an incredibly talented football team. Defensively, offensively, there's so much skill on this team. And they had terrible quarterback play last year. So that is a problem for them. The issue I find is that I don't think Aaron Rodgers is that good. And if this were an NFC team, we'd be talking about them maybe getting a first round bye, but they're not. They're in the AFC. The AFC is very, very good. The Jets are pretty good. So I don't think this year, this is going to be a team that I think is improved, but I don't think this is going to be a team that makes the playoffs. So I am slightly going under their win total at 9.5. And one of the bets I have circled, and we'll get to these on today's ticket, but one of the bets I have circled is them at plus 118 to miss the playoffs. So that is what we are going with on this particular one. So there you go. And at second place, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills coming in. I still have them going over 10.5 and finishing in second place in this division. I think there's a lot of people who are getting ready for a fall off of the Buffalo Bills because of how the postseason ended the last couple of years for them. They still didn't go out and get that real dynamic secondary piece in the offense to Stephon Diggs. And on the defensive side of the ball, no Von Miller for the first at least 4 weeks of the season. So that is a concern for me. This is still a really good team though. Josh Allen was clearly banged up and had some other things going on in his life over the back part of the season last year. I think he is going to be entirely healthy. This is a huge year, I think, for Sean McDermott as well. I think this team needs to show that they can absolutely be a Super Bowl contender if he's going to stick around. And thusly, I think that this is a team that makes a lot of noise in the playoffs, but I don't necessarily love them as a team to win this division. That obviously goes to the Miami Dolphins. I have the Dolphins coming in over 9.5, and they are plus 300 to win this division. I understand the risks. Tua Tagovailoa, concussion problems last year, but as I've said throughout my NFL previews this year, everyone is one injury away from being one injury a quarterback away to being on the outs. And every quarterback is one big hit away from being on the outs. Tua may be a bit more susceptible to that, but still, when you look at this team, I put them on my most talented teams in the NFL list for a reason. Tua, when he was healthy, was phenomenal. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, they add A-Chain. That this is an incredibly speedy group, and I think they improve things on the defensive side of the ball. And I've said before, Vic Fangio is one of the big additions to any team this offseason to go along with the coaching staff that I think in Miami is already very good. All of that combined means I think Miami wins this division, and so I like them at plus 300 to win the division, and I like them over 9.5. We go into the AFC North, and this one was an easy one. Cleveland, under 9 is where we are going. I don't think Deshaun Watson has it. I think there are some talented pieces, although I do think that the talent on this roster is maybe being overblown just a touch. Like they have a couple of difference makers, no doubt about it. But I just don't feel like they have enough in this division, in this conference, to be able to make any noise. And I think Deshaun Watson is cooked. So when your noted piece of shit quarterback isn't very good in a division where everyone seems to be pretty good, that becomes a problem. So I have the Cleveland Browns going under 9 wins. In at number 3, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know there's been a lot of preseason hype about Kenny Pickett, and they have built a very good roster around Kenny Pickett. You know, with Johnson and with Pickens in the backfield. I don't love Najee Harris, but I do love Jalen Warren. And on the defensive side of the ball, this remains one of the better defensive teams in the National Football League. And Mike Tomlin just doesn't lose more than he wins. He is one of the better coaches in this league, even though some analytics people may consider that differently. I am hesitating a little bit. Like I have them under 8.5, which tells you how far under I have Cleveland. But I don't think this is a team that finishes 500, but I'm not going to, that this is not going to be one of the picks that we click in today's ticket at the end of the program, or at the end of this portion of the program, because I just don't believe that they're going to be too far under and a couple of bounces and things go their way. But I have concerns that maybe the preseason hype is a little bit overblown. And so because of that, I'm pumping the brakes on some of the hype, but I have them finishing third in the division. At 2, Cincinnati. So we're going with upsets atop these divisions here. And that's actually a theme for this show in particular. For Cincinnati, I just worry a little bit with the offseason Joe Mixon had, with Joe Burrow's calf just creeping up a little bit. Again, very good football team, will be fine when it matters. But for the regular season, I think there could be a couple of surprising losses in here to start the year. And so because of that, I do think that they fall off just a touch. But I still have them, I do have them under 11.5, but not enough to click on that because I think they could go 11-6 very easily. Which means at number 1, it is the Baltimore Ravens. I have them over 10.5, and I have them at plus 230 to win the NFC North. I love the addition of Todd Monken. I think this team is going to be, to steal a cliche football term, very multiple. I think that there are going to be some weeks where the running attack just absolutely annihilates teams. I think there are going to be times where Lamar Jackson gets to step up as a pocket passer and show what he can do with Flowers, Bateman, and Odell Beckham Jr., and, Mark Andrews as well. They have, again, one of the better coaches in the league, and I think are pretty good on the defensive side of the ball. I think that this is the breakout year now for the Baltimore Ravens. I get Lamar Jackson has won the MVP, but I think this is kind of the second breakout then, as he reminds everyone just how good he can really be. That's why I love them to go over, and I really like them to win the division. That takes us to the AFC South, and we start with one of the teams that I feel is a lock in this. The Houston Texans at under 6.5. They have a rookie quarterback, a rookie coach, and a guy who hasn't called plays in a very long time. And on top of that, the offensive line sucks. But don't worry, because the weapons are really bad. But it's going to be fine, because the defense is kind of terrible. I don't see how this team gets to 7 wins at all. I could be proven wrong, but one of the real mantras of this show is believe bad teams. This is a bad football team, guys. This is a really, really bad football team. And while I think they're on the right path, it ain't going to be this year. It's going to be a rough year in Houston. I cannot fathom a way this team goes 7-10 this season. I simply cannot. At 3, it's Indianapolis, and they are one that is an absolute stay away. I went under just because we have to make a pick on everything. That's the format of the show. But there's a world where Anthony Richardson just fucking balls out, and this team elevates and is a real sleeper to win this division. But with no Jonathan Taylor, the running backs aren't very good. Pittman is a really good second wide receiver, but I just don't think they have the weapons to help him out, and I'm not necessarily buying in on this defense. So I think this is, again, a step in the process. I think Richardson's going to be really good. I just don't think it's going to be this year, so under 6.5 for me for the Indianapolis Colts. At 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another one that everyone's really hot and bothered by, and I think there is a step forward here for sure. Like, I think this team gets better. But again, this conference is so difficult. And I just think, like, Calvin Ridley's going to be great. If you guys listen to the fantasy portions of these, you know that I'm a believer in Tank Bigsby as well. I think Doug Peterson, we forget how it ended in Philadelphia. We remember how it started. We forget how it ended, and that wasn't great. I just think that this team may be overblown a little bit and maybe took advantage of circumstances last year. So I'm going to go under 9.5, but one of the picks I am clicking is Jacksonville plus 165 to miss the playoffs. And that is because the Tennessee Titans win this division, in my opinion. I love them at over 7.5, and I love them at plus 310 to win this division. I feel like everyone is forgetting. Again, last season, this team was 8-3, and then everybody got hurt. Tannehill got hurt. That was the main one, but they had suffered a number of injuries. Now they are back healthy. Malik Willis balled out in the preseason. Again, preseason, but it seems like he has taken a step. They have solidified the receiver room with DeAndre Hopkins and a second year of Burks. They have, I think, solidified the backup behind Derrick Henry with Tyjae Spears. And defensively, I think this team is fine, but I think they have one of the better head coaches in the league in Mike Vrabel. So I think the Tennessee Titans get the job done. They just simply can't have worse injury luck than they had last year. And last year, they were starting to really pull away with this division before things really fell off for them. And they still almost got in and were a couple of plays away from winning that Week 18 game against Jacksonville. So I have the Titans winning this division. In the AFC West, I have the Raiders under 6.5. This is a bad football team. They did nothing to really address the defensive side of the ball. They downgraded at quarterback. They have some weapons you like on offense, but the offense got work with the subtraction of Darren Waller. Returning is Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, but Jacobs missed a whole lot of training camp getting ready for this. And Devontae Adams, quite frankly, could be a trade deadline target because this team isn't going to be very good. Josh McDaniels might be the worst head coach in the league. Well, one of them anyway. I just think this team is putrid, and they are another one I don't believe at all they're going to win 7.5 games. And this is coming from a Raider fan, so that's going to be a difficult watch this year. I also have Denver at third, under 8.5. I think Russell Wilson's cooked, and I don't think there is any amount of magic voodoo that Sean Payton can bring in that is going to change that. And so maybe they go with Jared Stidham at the end of the year and maybe rattle off a couple, but I think this defense is worse than the defense last year. They made a couple of trades at the deadline to kind of get worse, and I don't think they did anything in the offseason to get better. They're already dealing with injuries at receiver, so I think this is kind of a sneaky bad football team, and just with a coach that everyone seems to love. So cool, but I think they get kind of beat up in this division. At 2, Kansas City. I think that the Chiefs go a little bit under 11.5. Just Travis Kelce is already banged up. There's the Chris Jones holdout. There's just enough there that I think keeps this team from reaching 12 wins this season. I don't think this is a 12-5 team. This isn't something I'm going to click on because 11-6, perfectly reasonable and would be the under on this. So I just don't think they're going to have that electric of a season. But I think stepping into their place is going to be the LA Chargers. And I think they take this one down at over 9.5. I'm not clicking on it to win the division because I'm not that bold about this, but I am picking them to win this division. I think the big addition is Kellen Moore into the offensive coordinator slot. I think they are going to unleash something in Justin Herbert, and that's going to be a whole lot of fun for this team to watch this year. I think that getting the depth behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen with Quentin Johnston drafted, I think that's going to be great. I still think they have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but I think bringing Kellen Moore in really unlocks something in this offense that they desperately needed the last couple of years. So I have the Chargers winning the AFC West. And so, to recap now, to go over, I guess, my playoff teams here, I have the Chargers as the 1 seed. So the Chargers get the bye. The 2-7 matchup is Baltimore against Cincinnati. The 3-6 is Miami, Kansas City. And the 4-5 is Tennessee, Buffalo, which is absolutely the first game. Whenever that happens, that is the first game. Actually, there's a couple NFC ones that are a little rough. So, out of that, the Chargers are obviously advancing. I have Cincinnati beating Baltimore in the 2-7 matchup, which will bring out a lot of questions about Baltimore and what direction that franchise is going, but that is the prediction here. In the 3-6 game, I have Miami taking on Kansas City, and I have the Chiefs picking up the win on the road in Miami, and I have the Buffalo Bills quite frankly, beating the fuck out of the Tennessee Titans in that playoff matchup. So my final 4 is Chargers, Bengals, Bills, and Chiefs. I have the Chargers beating the Bengals, going to the AFC title game, where they will host the Kansas City Chiefs, but they will lose on home soil to the Kansas City Chiefs, who go up to the Super Bowl for like the 45th time in a row. So those are my AFC predictions, over-unders given for every team. But which ones am I the most confident in, we'll find out in today's ticket. All right, it is time for today's ticket. These are all of the AFC picks that I am making a click on. Not big money put on all of them, just a little sprinkle on these. So I have clicked on Miami over 9.5 and plus 300 to win the division. Again, I'm banking on a lot here with Tua Tagovailoa staying healthy, but there is so much talent on this team. And you know what? Honestly, Mike White isn't even a bad backup, man. I think he's good enough that he can get the ball to these guys. He came in and played some smart football for the Jets a season ago, and so I think he is going to be able to step up. So I like Dolphins over 9.5 and them to win the division. I'm also clicking on the Jets to miss the playoffs at plus 118. Again, I think this is a good football team, but there's a lot of them in the AFC. If they expanded the AFC playoffs to 8 teams, they would be the first ones in, or the last ones in, I guess. In the North, I am going with Baltimore over 10.5, and I'm going with them to win the division. I just feel like a new offensive coordinator really does get things going for this football team. So I am going with that. And I am going with the Tennessee Titans to win the division at over 7.5 and them to win the division at plus 310 and to go over 7.5 wins. I am going Jacksonville to miss the playoffs at plus 165. And I'm going the Houston Texans under 6.5, as well as the Raiders under 6.5, the Broncos under 8.5, and the Chargers over 9.5. Those are my preview of my futures picks. As for the game tonight, Kansas City taking on the Detroit Lions, I'm going Kansas City minus 4.5. And I am going with the over at 53.5. I don't think the Lions can defend at all. We will get into more of that in the NFC preview, but I don't think that the Lions can defend much. And so I think that the Chiefs kind of score on every possession. And I don't think, I don't think that this is the same dominant year for the Chiefs this year, at least in the regular season, but I do think here in week 1, they are going to humble this Detroit Lions team. So I have the Chiefs minus 4.5 and the over at 53.5 for this football game. All right, let's start things off in the NFC East, and we once again work our way from the bottom and all the way to the top. And we will begin that with the Washington Commanders. Hope springs eternal in Washington. Sam Howell has been good in the preseason. Their dog shit owner is now just a dog shit person and no longer an owner of the NFL team. So hope springs eternal. I'm going under 6.5. Still not a good football team in a really, really difficult division, the most difficult division in the NFC. Like, it's not great. Like, Sam Howell, I'm not buying it. I like Antonio Gibson. I like Terry McLaurin. I like Jahan Dotson. Don't like the offensive line. Like a couple pieces on the defense, but not enough pieces on the defense, and I don't think their coach is very good. So I am going under 6.5 on Washington, but they absolutely could be one of the surprise teams this year. One of the surprise teams from last year, the New York Giants. I am going a slight over on the Giants. Not enough to click, but I'm going the Giants over at 7.5. I was proven wrong on Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll last year, but this still isn't a team that has surrounded Daniel Jones with enough on offense, or I don't think enough quite yet on defense, although, no, that defense is pretty good. That's underselling it. I just don't think there's enough to keep pace with all of the good in this conference, and so I do think they take a bit of a step, but I also think they missed the playoffs this year. So that's where I am at on the New York Giants. And then there is the Dallas Cowboys. I have them at over 9.5. I have concerns about this Dallas Cowboys team, mainly that Mike McCarthy has a bit more control. I think we're banking too much on best case scenario with Tony Pollard, but there's obviously a lot of talent on this team. They have the best defensive player in the league in Micah Parsons. I still believe in Dak Prescott a little bit. I think that the interception total was kind of worst case scenario for him a season ago. So I think that this is a Dallas Cowboys team that's going to be good, but it's just what will happen when they get into big moments in the postseason. We'll talk about that in a second. All of this means number one is still the Philadelphia Eagles. This is, I think, one of the most talented teams in the NFL and thus in the NFC. So I think that the Eagles come away here with another division crown, even if Jalen Hurts takes a bit of a step back, which I don't think he will, by the way. I think Hurts actually takes a step forward because this was a team that just didn't have to do anything in the second half of a lot of these games. Like, yes, maybe the competition is difficult, but they beat the shit out of basically everybody last year. And that was a problem, honestly, with Jalen Hurts in fantasy, was that they kind of just mailed it in the second half of these games. So I think they will be challenged a little bit more, but I think they will be up to that challenge. I think they upgraded the defense in the draft. And so I think that this is an Eagles team that actually got better coming out of their Super Bowl loss a year ago. Moving on now to the NFC North. In last place, the Minnesota Vikings. I do think the hate's gone a little too far on the Vikings, but I am going under 8.5, which could just be 8 and 9. But I am going under 8.5 on the Vikings. We all know it. They were incredibly lucky in one-score games a season ago. I think Kirk Cousins is pretty well done. I like the addition of Jordan Addison. I think going from Dalvin Cook to Alexander Mattison is actually a drop-off, and I don't necessarily trust this defense. So I think they are under, but I'm not absolutely hammering that one at all. I am going under on the Detroit Lions at 9.5, and I am going at plus 140 for this team to miss the playoffs. They can't defend. We seem to have forgotten that. It was so much fun last year, the finish they had to the season and all of that. This team can't defend worth a lick, and that's a major problem for them, in my opinion anyway. This is a team that is banking on Jared Goff to outscore everyone. I don't think they improved the defensive side of the ball enough, and quite frankly, I think they got a touch worse in this offseason going from DeAndre Swift to Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Gibbs will be fine, but maybe he won't be. So I have major concerns about this Detroit Lions team to really take that step that everyone is thinking they are going to. So I have the Lions to miss at plus 140. Which means in second, I have Chicago. I'm actually buying what the Bears are selling. I think that there are enough pieces on the defensive side of the ball to kind of keep them in games, and I think they take a huge step this year offensively. We all know from the fantasy football previews, I like Khalil Herbert a lot. DJ Moore is a real number one receiver. Behind him, you put Darnell Mooney at 2, and you put Chase Claypool at 3. With Cole Kmet as your tight end, it's a pretty good group. Offensive line, could there be some concerns? Sure, but Justin Fields is mobile enough to get away from those. So I think that this is a Bears team that takes a step this year and not the Detroit Lions. So I have the Bears at over 7.5, which means I have the Green Bay Packers winning this division one more time. Look, the Packers came close to winning this division last year with below league average quarterback play. Aaron Rodgers was in the bottom third of the league when it came to EPA per dropback, which is basically just it. You know how weighted runs created is a stat in baseball? It's basically that same thing. Like, how much did you add to your team's points expectation on each play? And he didn't, quite frankly. So I think that this is a team that still gets like average to slightly below average quarterback play, as my dog snores in the background. You're okay? No, yeah. She's chasing something in her dreams. But I think this is a team that takes that still gets average to below average quarterback play, but Christian Watson takes a step forward. Romeo Doubs takes a step forward. I still like the two-headed backfield of Aaron Jones and of A.J. Dillon. I still think they have a very good coach, so I think they have a pretty good team. And so I think the Green Bay Packers continue on as the heads of this division and win this division, and I like it at plus 350 and the over at 7.5, which moves us to the NFC South. In last place in this division, Carolina. Once again, believe bad teams. What part of this team makes you think that they are going to take any kind of step? 7.5, 8 and 9? Really? With a rookie quarterback who'll be fine, an offensive line that can't block, they have nothing around them for skill positions, aside from Miles Sanders, who's probably a little bit overrated from his time with Philadelphia. Defensively, this is a fine team. Coaching staff, not good. So I just think that this is asking so much from a rookie quarterback in year one. I think they take a bit of another step back. I think maybe next year is the year. Boy, if they could get a top 3 pick and get Marvin Harrison Jr., that would really help set this team up a little bit. Although they need offensive line. So another one that went out and got the quarterback first and now has realized that they don't really have the foundation around him. So that is that. At third in this division, I have the Atlanta Falcons. I like so many pieces on this Falcons team, and I want to like them more. It's just Desmond Ridder, I think, is bad. There's accuracy issues. There are some talented players on this team, but that doesn't matter if he's throwing the ball behind them. They needed help on defense. They didn't draft it. Instead, they drafted a running back on the team that was number 1 in rushing the football last year. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There were ways that they could have improved this team, and they just didn't, and oh, it's so frustrating because they're a quarterback away from being, I think, the clear-cut favorite in this division. At 2, this is going to surprise some people. I have New Orleans. I get Derek Carr is yoked. I think he's done. I think last year was an emotional toll on him. I think Dennis Allen is kind of a bad coach. They have Chris Olave, but then after that, like Michael Thomas is cooked. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara, but he's out the first 3 weeks of the season. This defense will probably be pretty good because Dennis Allen can coach up some defenses. So that's why I do. Spoiler alert: I do have this as a playoff team, but I just don't think that. Well, now looking at it, I mean, I do have them under 9.5. So having them as a playoff team might be a bit of a stretch. So you know what? I don't have them as a playoff team. That defense is going to be good, but I think Derek Carr is kind of done. So I'm going to go under 9.5, which means the biggest upset call that we have this year is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the NFC South. I have them at over 6.5 and plus 800 to win this division. All of the talk, and look, you're going to have to follow me for a second because this is involving defending Baker Mayfield. But all the talk last year was how Geno Smith was going to bring down everything in Seattle. Maybe they'll even go with Drew Lock. Oh, they're going with Geno Smith. Wow, they're really trying to tank. Hey, playoff team. There are a ton of weapons around Baker Mayfield who, albeit not a very good Raider defense, but came out and surprised some people. I think Baker, knowing this is his last shot, can be good enough to get this team into a playoff game where they'll lose by 40. I think regular season in this division, Baker with Evans and Godwin and White on the offensive side of the ball is going to be good enough to win this division. Defensively, they're fine, but I think Baker Mayfield has one last hurrah in him and takes this team to the promised land. And if not, whatever, it's one division. But no, I think that the value at over 6.5 in this division, you already got 2 against Carolina. Even if you split 1-1 against New Orleans and with Atlanta, there we go. I got 4 wins. I only need 3 more the rest of the way to hit the over on this. Sure. And you could win this division at 8-9, quite frankly. So I like the value on both of these calls to get Tampa Bay as your division winner and as a team that goes over their win total at 6.5. Moving into the NFC West, we will start at the bottom, Arizona. Quite frankly, if this win total was at 0.5, I would take the under. This is clearly the worst football team in the league. They can't defend. They have a dreadful coach. That's not true. They just have a coach who's really awkward in giving motivational speeches that the web team then puts out online. Their quarterback situation is awful. I don't think Kyler Murray plays a snap for them this year. And there's nothing around them. Like, this is just an unmitigated disaster in Arizona. They're going to be real bad. Speaking of which, the LA Rams. Always good when the wife of your quarterback says, yeah, my husband, Matthew Stafford, just isn't really gelling with all of the young players on this team. This feels like it's going to be a down year. Cooper Kupp, it is sounding real bad about what's happening with Cooper Kupp's hamstring. Cam Akers could have a big year, but I think that the decline continues as they continue to pay back what is owed to them, I guess. Pay back what they owe, I guess, for their Super Bowl wins. Seattle at over 8.5. I have them going with that win total. Again, this team built that foundation in the draft. Geno Smith, will he take a step back? Maybe. But they add Jackson Smith and Jigba. They add Charbonneau in that backfield, so I like the skill position players. Pete Carroll is just a wizard, and defensively this team will be sound. So I think Seattle going over 8.5, I feel comfortable with that. And again, you're getting at least 4 wins from your division. At number 1 in San Francisco, this shouldn't surprise you. They are, I think, maybe the most talent-rich team in the NFL, except for at the quarterback position. But even if Brock Purdy isn't it, I think Sam Darnold could be in this offense. And I like Sam Darnold is absolutely one of the guys who I just can't quit, but I just can't quit him. But the rest of this team is so fucking good offensively with Debo, with Christian McCaffrey, with Brandon Ayuk, with George Kittle, with Elijah Mitchell as well, and Kyle Shanahan leading the way. Defensively, they get Bosa figured out. There's just so many pieces on this team that are so much better than anyone they're going to be facing this season. So San Francisco is a clear over for me at 11. They do finish as the 2 seed in my projections for the NFC projections. I'm picking them. There's not a whole lot of statistical analysis goes into it. But San Francisco is my 2 seed, which means Philadelphia is the 1. The other 2 seeds by division winner. So it is Green Bay in the 3, Tampa Bay in the 4. The wild cards, the number 1 wild card would be Dallas. So they would play Tampa Bay. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Then it is Seattle. I have them against Green Bay. And then it would be the Chicago Bears getting into the playoffs. They would take on San Francisco. The 49ers would win that game by 100 to move on. I have Seattle beating Green Bay. Again, probably by a lot. and I have Dallas beating Tampa Bay. This is one in both conferences. I have some really good wildcard teams this year, so I think there are going to be some road wins for those teams in the wildcard round. In the divisional round, that sets up as Philadelphia against Seattle. It's a pretty easy win for the Eagles, and it sets up as San Francisco against Dallas. This is where I do think Mike McCarthy ends up hurting this team a little bit, and San Francisco moves on. So once again, it is San Francisco against Philadelphia, and once again, it is the Philadelphia Eagles advancing. So we have a rematch from the Super Bowl, where it is the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. And this time, it goes the way of Jason Kelce. I think the Philadelphia Eagles take this one. I think they made enough improvements on the defensive side of the ball. And that game, quite frankly, against Kansas City last year was a coin toss. I just think this team takes another step this year. And when you lose the Super Bowl, there is only one more step for you to take. And that means the Philadelphia Eagles will be your 2024 Super Bowl champions. Now, am I willing to put my money where my mouth is? Let's find out in today's ticket. All right, time for today's ticket. These are going to be all of the picks that I click. And again, for those of you watching today, when this comes out, or listening when this comes out, the Kansas City Chiefs -4.5 and the over 53.5 on the Thursday nighter that opens up the regular season. But picks that I click in the NFC, not quite as many. Green Bay over 7.5 and +350 to win the division. Like I said before, they came close last year and Aaron Rodgers was bad. So if Jordan Love is just bad, this team should be competitive in this division. Detroit under 9.5 and +140 to miss the playoffs. I am not buying the hype on the Lions. I am certainly not buying in on Carolina. I am under 7.5 on the Carolina Panthers, and I am in on Tampa Bay. We are going over 6.5 and +800 on the Buccaneers to win this division. We are going with the Arizona Cardinals under 3.5. They're just going to be putrid this year, and we are going over 8.5 on Seattle. That is the pick that we are clicking there. So, one more Super Bowl pick. I'm rocking the cameras here. I am going to lock it in on Jalen Hurts at +800. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles at +800 to win the Super Bowl. And I'm going at +1200 on Justin Herbert to win the MVP. Slight edge over Jalen Hurts. I think they both have really good seasons, but I think the voters give it to Herbert for doing it in the more difficult conference. So that is the show. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. If you're listening on podcast, thank you all so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, like this video, all of that stuff really, really helps. Tomorrow on the show, it's a Fights in Football Friday, so we get into UFC 293, Israel Adesanya defending the UFC Middleweight Championship of the world. I'll have some AEW thoughts as well, as they just wrapped up 2 pay-per-views in 2 weeks. And then it is a pick per game, or a play per game. I forget what we're calling it, but going through every NFL game and giving at least one wager to look at, plus some fantasy analysis on each and every game on the NFL schedule. Plus some CFL talk as well. We haven't got into a lot of CFL while we've been doing the NFL previewing, but we'll be getting into CFL power rankings and whatnot for all of that. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. You can get in touch with me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm at Primetime Klein, twitch.tv/PrimetimePK, and you can email the show, couchpotatodiary@yahoo.com. Thank you all so much, and I will talk to you all later.